All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let me just say welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tanenbaum's World Olympics for All webinar series. I'm excited to see you all today, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you all about teaching the values of respect, diversity, and good sportspersonship through the Olympic Games. Let me just begin by introducing myself. My name is Daniel Del Nido, and I am Senior Education Program Associate at the Tanenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding. I will be hosting this webinar series along with my associates Dolores Troy Quinn and Mark Fowler. Just a quick note before I begin, this session is being recorded, and you all will be able to access the recording after today's session is finished. As another note, I'll be taking questions at the end of today's session. If you have a question that you don't want to forget, please feel free just to put it in the chat and I'll answer it at the end. So I'm very excited to begin this 5-part webinar series on using our updated curriculum, World Olympics, to build behaviors of respect for difference, including religious difference in students. But before I get to that, I'm going to throw some pop quiz questions at you. So here's a couple of questions. First question. When was the first modern Olympic Games held? Was it A, 1776, B, 1896, C, 1924, or D, 1950? You can put your answers in the chat. When was the first modern Olympic Games held? Okay, thank you for your answers. The correct answer is B. The first modern Olympic Games was held in Athens, Greece in 1896. Second question. Which Olympic athlete holds the most gold medals? Is it A, Simone Biles of the United States of America, B, Larissa Natividad of Russia or the former Soviet Union, C, Michael Phelps of the United States of America, or D, Takashi Ono of Japan? So which Olympic athlete holds the most gold medals? Answers in the chat. All right, thank you. Correct answer is C, Michael Phelps, who has 23 gold medals. The gymnast Larissa Natividad is in a 4-way tie for the second most gold medals with 9. Larissa Natividad also has the second most medals of any kind with a total of 18. Michael Phelps has 28. So thank you all for your answers to these quiz questions. I hope that these questions got us thinking a little bit about the past and present of the Olympic Games, as well as how different nations, cultures, and histories are represented in the Games. Celebrating the diversity that the Olympic Games represents is the theme of this webinar series. So over the course of these 5 sessions, we will give you practical advice on how to teach behaviors of respect through the Olympic Games in a way that is fun, interactive, and builds important social and emotional skills in students. Our aim is to make teaching respect easy for teachers. We will show you how to use current and past Olympic events to teach social and emotional skills of respectful curiosity and good sportspersonship to students. We will also give suggestions on how to fit lessons and activities that build social and emotional skills into English language arts, social studies, and even STEM content areas. By the end of this webinar series, we hope you will be inspired not only to use some of the content we provide, but also to build on the lessons and activities we discuss and to make them your own. All of this discussion is made possible by a generous grant from the Nissan Foundation. Without their support, we would not have been able to take the time to develop the unique tips and suggestions we will provide in this webinar series. Their support has also made it possible for us to deliver these sessions free of charge. So I'd like to take this moment to thank the Nissan Foundation for its support of Tanenbaum's work. And we have a great schedule of episodes lined up for this webinar series. So during today's session, we will discuss how to present fundamental values of teamwork and good sportspersonship to students, and communicate how stereotypes harm group relationships. In next Friday's session, we will go over the history of the Olympic Games, the values expressed in the Olympic Oath, and how to work with your students to build your own classroom agreement of good sportspersonship. Our third episode, taking place on March 4th, will turn to good nutrition and how religious identity affects dietary practices. During our fourth episode, we will present ways to have students learn about the diverse nations, cultures, and religions represented at the Olympic Games. And we will finish up our series on March 18th with a session on how to put on your own class or program or even school-wide Olympic Games. And just as a quick note, any participant who attends all 5 webinar sessions will be entitled to a one-on-one meeting with myself and other education staff to discuss implementing the World Olympics curriculum in your classroom. So the content of this webinar series is based on Tanenbaum's World Olympics curriculum, which has recently been updated and released as a second edition. The curriculum is available as a free download from our website, www.tanenbaum.org/education. World Olympics is designed to implement Tanenbaum's pedagogical theory, which includes 2 parts. The first part, our 7 principles for inclusive education, outlines educational practices that help teachers reach all of their students, represent and celebrate their unique identities, and help them build behaviors of respect. Our 6 behavioral learning outcomes identify different components of respectful conduct and what they look like in practice. More information about our pedagogy is also available on our website. Both pieces of our pedagogical theory further Tanenbaum's overall mission. The Tanenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding promotes justice and builds respect for religious difference by transforming individuals and institutions to reduce prejudice, hatred, and violence. Although we seek to build respect for religious difference, Tanenbaum is a secular and non-sectarian organization. We like to say that we're not here to promote religion, nor to denigrate religion, nor to advocate for any particular religion. We're here because religion is an important component of people's lives and identities. We believe that everyone, regardless of their religious or non-religious affiliation, deserves to have their beliefs respected. We pursue our mission in 4 program areas. Our workplace program partners with a variety of for and not-for-profit workplaces to conduct diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives with a focus on religion. Our peace-building program convenes a global network of peacemakers using religion to build lasting foundations for peace in active and post-conflict zones. Our healthcare program provides medical professionals with tools to better understand how patients' religious beliefs may influence their healthcare decisions. And last, but hopefully not least, is us in the education program. Tanenbaum's education program works with K-12 schools across the country and even internationally to help students respect the differences, including the religious differences, among themselves, and to engage in social and emotional growth. We provide educators with written resources such as full curricula, individual lesson plans, holiday planning guides, and fact sheets. We also deliver in-person trainings on a variety of topics, from Tanenbaum materials to addressing religious diversity in the classroom, and also to building community within schools. And finally, we design and produce live webinars and professional development opportunities like today's. Our aim throughout is to provide educators with the tools they need to build cultures of respect that spread throughout their entire school. And with that introduction, let's jump into today's topic, which is all about sportspersonship and teamwork. Today's session is based on the content of Unit 1 of our World Olympics curriculum, which is titled Creating a Team. The lessons and activities we are about to discuss are active and participatory. They use teamwork to teach about teamwork. Students will collaborate in small groups to explore the meanings of concepts like sportspersonship, teamwork, the ideal athlete, and stereotyping. These lessons closely align with ELA learning standards for oral and written communication. Students work together to define key terms, choose questions for interviews with their classmates, create books about athlete role models, play teamwork games, and use role play to learn about stereotyping. They also help students to develop the interpersonal, social, and emotional competencies they need to work together successfully and to value the diverse talents and skills of their peers. Our first lesson is all about defining good sportspersonship. Students will read a series of quotations from sports figures about fair play, hard work, positive thinking, and the importance of teamwork. These quotations will help students put together their own definition of sportspersonship that can be shared with and agreed upon by the class. As you begin this lesson, it can be helpful to start with a definition of a sport. Here's a definition that we can use for our purposes today. A sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against one another for entertainment. Once you've defined the topic of sports, you can begin to have students brainstorm what good sportspersonship looks like. A good starting question is, how should people behave when they play a sport? Ask students to identify specific actions that characterize the way people should behave when they play a sport, and write them on the board or in a word cloud. These behaviors will form the basis of their answer to the second question. What is good sportspersonship? I like to begin with a brainstorming activity like this because it gets students active and thinking for themselves about the topic. It also prepares them to connect their own thinking to the quotations the class will read together. So here are two examples of quotations your class can look at. More examples can be found in Unit 1, Lesson 1 of World Olympics. Let's look at these quotations together. How would you interpret Knute Rockne's line? Win or lose, do it fairly. Put any suggestions you might have in the chat. Play fair, winning is the only thing in sports? Yeah, so how would you interpret Knute Rockne's line? We have a couple of suggestions. Playing fair, winning isn't the only important thing in sports. Thank you for those. Let's go on to the second one. What do you think that Dean Smith means when he says that a lion never roars after a kill? It doesn't gloat. Thank you for that. So thank you very much for your answers. Don't make the opposing team feel bad. Great. So now that we have these quotations together, we can work with students to put together a definition of good sportspersonship for the class. You can have students share their definitions of good sportspersonship with the class, and as an extension activity, you can have students come to a consensus on a class-wide definition. After defining sportspersonship, the next step is to have students develop a list of traits they associate with good sportspersonship. Doing so will give students the opportunity not only to build their vocabulary of positive character traits, but also to expand their understanding of good sportspersonship by taking in a wide variety of perspectives on the topic. Our second lesson today asks students to interview each other to get their opinions on what good sportspersonship entails. World Olympics provides a handout with possible interview questions about different athletes and other public figures that students admire and why they admire them. You can also have students brainstorm interview questions to ask each other and come to consensus as a class on a few standard questions. One way to open the conversation is by asking students if they can think of a story they know of from their own lives or from TV about good sportspersonship and collect a couple of examples. A different way to open the conversation that may be more accessible to younger students is to read aloud a picture book about an athlete who displays good sportspersonship. One book we recommend is Wilma Unlimited by Kathleen Kroll, which is about how Wilma Rudolph overcame childhood polio and eventually became a runner on the US Olympic team, and in 1960 became the first woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympiad. Additional readings can be found in the World Olympics curriculum. After reading the book, generate a web of important traits that Wilma Rudolph, or whoever your chosen athlete or athletes are, possess. This will provide a more concrete way to open conversation about what an ideal athlete is. Let's try putting this together for ourselves. So here's the question. What makes an ideal athlete? Can you list any traits or characteristics that you associate with an ideal athlete? You can put some answers in the chat. Teamwork, that's great. Tenacity, I like it. Persistence. Strong commitment to improvement. These are all really great answers. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. A great way to follow up this activity is to show some images of individuals who break the mold of what we think an athlete looks like. So take a look at these athletes. So how might looking at these athletes' pictures help us revise or add to our understanding of what an ideal athlete is? If you have any answers, you can put them in the chat. Strong. Thank you. Yeah, so expanding students' understanding of what ideal athletes can be in this way helps prepare others for subsequent discussions of stereotypes. So we have a couple other answers here. Does not let others define them. Willing to be in public. Those are all great answers. So building our word cloud, our word association this way, will help students practice recognizing assumptions that they might have about people and finding examples that challenge those assumptions. You can even extend this lesson to reinforce students' experience of breaking down stereotypes. One way to do this is by creating a class poem. Have students choose one of the words from their word cloud or character web that describes an ideal athlete and have students, either individually or in groups, write a poem or story that connects them. Another way is to direct students to conduct research projects on other athletes who break the mold of a stereotypical athlete. Students can present on their research in the form of a book they write about that athlete, or by putting on a living wax museum where students dress up as and act like their chosen athlete. This activity can be a great addition to an ELA unit on biography. Our fourth lesson for today is another research assignment that you can give your students. The goal for this research project is to identify what makes someone a good role model for others. This is a great research project as it allows you to bring together your discussions of good sportspersonship from the beginning with students thinking about athletes who break the mold. You can begin this project by asking students to think of someone they admire, to share the name of that person with the class and why they admire that person. Once students have shared, you can then ask students if there are any things the people they admire have in common with each other. What characteristics they have, for instance, or something about their biographies. You can then allow students either to conduct further research on the biography of the person they chose in class, or ask them to research a different person and describe what makes that person a good role model. One Olympian you can use it as an example for this activity is Shelly Ann Fraser-Price, a sprinter from Jamaica whose most recent Olympics was the 2021 Tokyo Games. Fraser-Price grew up in a poor and violence-ridden area of Kingston, Jamaica, and ran barefoot in her first track and field events in primary school. When she started racing professionally, her short stature and incredible speed earned her the name Pocket Rocket. To date, she has won 3 Olympic gold medals, 4 silver medals, and 1 bronze medal. She also operates the Pocket Rocket Foundation, which helps cover school fees for lower income students. Renewal in the program is based on scholastic achievement in order to encourage students to balance sports and academics in their lives. Her resilience, perseverance, and generosity make her a role model for kids of any circumstances. Our fifth lesson for today gives students an opportunity to take what they have learned about good sportspersonship and ideal athletes and put it into practice. Students will undertake two challenges in which they will have to work in teams to accomplish a difficult goal. The first challenge is called Silent Birthdays. To conduct this challenge, choose one location in your classroom that represents the start date of January 1st. Choose a second location as your end date of December 31st. Ask students to arrange themselves in order of their birthdays. The trick is that students can only communicate with each other using hand signals. So no talking, no writing, nothing other than hand signals. The second challenge is called tennis ball transfer. For this challenge, divide students up into teams of 5 and have them each attach 5 strings to a metal washer. Then, with each student in a team holding one string, have teams carry a tennis ball in their washer and strings across the room and deposit it in a cup. Allow teams time to plan how they will carry the tennis ball in their strings. Completing both activities might take 2 class periods. Close out these activities with some follow-up questions. For the first activity, focus on what difficulties the lack of verbal communication caused. How did your students work around them? What did they learn about teamwork in doing so? Then ask students what made the second challenge fun. It's worth it to discuss the difference between physical and non-physical difficulties teams might have experienced in the course of this challenge. Throughout your discussion, encourage students to practice using the vocabulary they have assembled during the previous lessons. Ask them follow-up questions, such as when they experienced behaviors associated with teamwork or with good sportspersonship. Did any of them act like ideal athletes while they were conducting these activities? If you want to go even deeper, ask students how these activities might have gone differently if a coach had been directing them. Have students imagine what a coach would say if they just observed the students as they conducted these activities. What would a coach say about what makes a team work well? Our last lesson for today addresses this very question. Our last activity today demonstrates how stereotypes negatively impact our judgment. To conduct this activity, divide the class up into roles. Assign or randomly choose 2 students to act as coaches, choose another 8 to play the role of students trying out for school teams, and have the remainder of the class act as official observers. The observers will pay careful attention to and take notes about the interactions between coaches and students. Once you have divided the class up into roles, give the 8 students trying out for school teams identity cards. You can see examples of these cards on the left side of this slide. The front of each card lists each student's physical characteristics. The back of each card describes their personality. The catch is that only the front side with physical characteristics is visible to the 2 coaches. Direct the coaches to conduct a draft to pick students to be on a team they are running. Have one coach pick students to participate on an academic quiz squad, and the other choose students for an athletics squad. Coaches are allowed to ask only 2 questions of each student trying out. After coaches have picked teams, bring the class together for some discussion. Ask the students who tried out for each team whether, based now on their personality cards, they are happy with the teams they were picked for. Ask coaches how and why they chose students to participate on their team. Ask them how they might have chose differently, knowing more about the students. And ask the observers to share what they noticed and if they have any advice for the coaches or the students. Bring this discussion together by asking how stereotyping played a role in the coach's decisions, and how making decisions based on stereotypes would impact each student's ability to participate in their team. Could students act as ideal athletes under these conditions? By discussing how stereotyping negatively impacts students' ability to act as ideal athletes, Lesson 6 rounds out Unit 1's investigation of good sportspersonship. The lessons and activities we've discussed today build the foundation for student behaviors of respect and good sportspersonship. The first two lessons have students examine real-world examples of good sportspersonship to make the concept concrete and applicable to their own lives. Students then conduct research into the biographies of different kinds of athletes to expand their notion of what an ideal athlete can be. This research teaches students that people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, genders, and ability statuses all have talents that are valuable on a team and that should be respected and included. These lessons guide students as they break down their own stereotypes of what ideal athletes can be. Our last lessons make the negative impacts of stereotypes clear through interactive role playing. By the end of Unit 1, students will have a solid understanding of the behaviors that make up good sportspersonship, as well as some of the behaviors that weaken teamwork. The following units will give students an opportunity to practice behaviors of good sportspersonship and to learn more about the Olympic Games while doing so. And that brings us to the end of this first episode of World Olympics for All 2022. Thank you all for your time and your participation, and be sure to join us next Friday at 2:30 p.m. as we look at the history of the Olympic Games and the values that they represent. And I'll now take any questions that you might have. All right. Well, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.